Orbital Station was the biggest trade hub in this part of the galaxy. It floated in the darkness of space where 12 major travel routes crossed each other. Every day, thousands of ships came and went. Every day, creatures from hundreds of different worlds walked through its long metal hallways. The station was like a city that never slept. Markets stayed open at all hours. Restaurants served food from 1,000 planets. Hotels rented rooms to travelers who needed rest before continuing their journeys. It was loud, crowded, and full of life. Park walked through the main marketplace with her hands in the pockets of her worn jacket. She was 28 years old, with black hair tied back in a practical ponytail and tired eyes that had seen too many stars. For the last 3 years, she had worked as a cargo specialist, hauling freight between Earth's colonies and alien trading posts. It was not an exciting job, but it paid well enough to keep her ship running. Beside her walked her and the ship's mechanic. He was a few years older than her, with broad shoulders and hands that were always stained with engine grease no matter how much he washed them. He had served in Earth's military before deciding that fixing engines was better than fighting wars. "I need to find replacement parts for the cooling system," said, looking around at the crowded stalls. "If I don't fix it soon, we'll be cooking ourselves alive by the time we reach the next port." Nodded, "Go ahead. I want to look around for a bit, maybe find something interesting to eat." Grinned, "Try not to buy anything too strange this time. I still have nightmares about those purple fruits you brought back from." "They were delicious," said with a small smile. "You just don't have good taste." Laughed and walked away toward the parts dealers on the other side of the market. Watched him go, then turned and wandered deeper into the crowd. She loved places like this. Every species in the galaxy seemed to pass through stations like at some point. She saw tall, thin creatures with blue skin and too many eyes. She saw small, round beings that rolled instead of walked. She saw things that looked like walking plants, things that looked like floating clouds, things that she could not even begin to describe. Most of them paid no attention to her. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community. Earth had only made contact with alien life about 50 years ago. In the grand scale of galactic history, humans were bobbies taking their first steps, but had learned that being underestimated could be useful. People who thought you were weak and harmless tended to leave you alone. High above the marketplace, on an observation deck that most visitors never noticed, something watched the crowd below. They had been on the station for 3 standard cycles. It had learned the layout of every corridor, every maintenance tunnel, every dark corner where security cameras did not reach. It had studied the patrol patterns of the station's guards. It had identified the species that were protected by powerful governments and the species that no one would miss. It was a perfect predator. Evolution had shaped it for one purpose: to hunt and kill. The stood nearly 3 meters tall, but right now it was pressed against the wall, its skin changing color to match the gray metal behind it. It had 4 arms, each ending in hands with retractable claws that could cut through most materials. Its face had no eyes in the traditional sense. Instead, 6 thermal sensing pits surrounded a circular mouth filled with hundreds of needle-thin teeth. It saw the world in heat. Every living creature below was a bright shape against the cooler background of metal and stone. It could track a warm body through walls. It could sense the heartbeat of prey from 20 meters away. They had already taken 7 victims from this station, travelers who wandered too far from the crowds, creatures who made the mistake of being alone in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their bodies were never found. Their disappearances were blamed on the station's criminal element. No one suspected that a hunter was among them. Now they watched the crowd below, searching for its next meal. Its thermal pits swept back and forth, analyzing each potential target. Too many of them traveled in groups. Too many belonged to species with powerful friends. It was patient, but it was also careful. It had survived this long by choosing its prey wisely. Its attention drifted across a group of traders. Too many of them together. It would be impossible to take one without the others noticing. It looked at a diplomat walking with two guards. Too risky. Killing a diplomat could bring investigators. Then its sensors detected something unusual. There was a creature in the crowd that burned hotter than anything around it. The focused on the heat signature, curious. Most species in the galaxy were cold-blooded, or they regulated their body temperature to match their surroundings. This creature was different. It was like a small star walking through the marketplace. They tracked the heat source and found a small, soft-looking biped. No claws, no fangs, no armor, no visible weapons. It moved through the crowd with a casual ease, stopping occasionally to look at items for sale. The creature was alone. Its companion had walked away toward another part of the market. The felt hunger stir in its belly. This looked like easy prey. Small, unprotected, isolated from its herd. Perfect. It began to move, flowing through the shadows of the observation deck toward the maintenance tunnels that would bring it closer to its target. The hunt had begun. Far below, stopped at a stall selling preserved foods from distant worlds. She picked up a jar and tried to read the alien writing on the label. She had no idea what was inside, but it looked interesting. She did not notice the shadow moving above her. She did not feel the predator's attention fixed on her back. She was just a human, doing human things, completely unaware that something ancient and hungry had chosen her as its next victim. The moved through the maintenance tunnels like water flowing downhill. Its body was built for this kind of movement. Silent, smooth, invisible. The dim emergency lights in the tunnels cast weak shadows, but they did not need light to see. It saw heat, and the walls around it were full of it. Pipes carrying warm liquids, electrical systems humming with energy, and somewhere ahead the bright burning shape of its prey. The hunting protocols of they were ancient. They had been passed down through thousands of generations, coded into their very blood. Every knew these rules from the moment they were born. First rule, identify the prey, study it, learn its patterns, understand its weaknesses. Second rule, isolate the prey from its group. Herds were dangerous. A single creature was vulnerable. Third rule, strike fast and strike hard. Do not give the prey time to fight or call for help. Fourth rule, never hunt something stronger than yourself. They had followed these rules its entire life. They had kept it alive on a where death waited behind every rock and inside every shadow. They had helped it survive when it left its planet and began hunting among the stars. Now it applied these rules to the strange, hot creature it had spotted in the marketplace. The prey was small. They estimated its height at less than 2 meters. Its body was soft, covered in fabric rather than armor or thick hide. It moved slowly compared to many species that had hunted. It had no claws, no fangs, no poison glands. Through the walls of the maintenance tunnel they could see the creature's heat signature clearly. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with a brain that burned bright and hot. Easy prey. The creature's companion had left. Good. They would not have to deal with 2 targets. One was much simpler. The prey was drifting away from the main crowds of the marketplace. Better and better. They tracked its movement, calculating the best place to strike. There was a section of the market that ended in a dead-end alcove. If the prey wandered there, it would be trapped. They felt its hunting instincts sharpen, its muscles tensed, its claws extended slightly, then retracted. Not yet. Patience was the key to a successful hunt. In the marketplace below, had left the food stalls behind. She was now walking through a quieter section of the market where antique dealers displayed their goods. Strange objects from 100 worlds sat on dusty shelves. Old weapons, ancient books written in dead languages, artifacts whose purposes had been forgotten long ago. Like this part of the market, it was less crowded, less noisy. She could think here. She stopped in front of a stall selling navigation equipment from ships that had stopped flying centuries ago. The dealer, A small creature with gray fur and 6 legs watched her with hopeful eyes. Looking for something specific, the dealer asked through a translator device. Just looking said, "These are beautiful." The dealer made a sound that might have been pleasure. Old things have stories. Every scratch, every dent tells a tale. Smiled and moved on. She wandered deeper into the antique section, drawn by curiosity. She had always loved exploring. Even as a child on Earth, she had spent hours walking through forests and climbing hills, just to see what was on the other side. She did not realize she was walking into a dead end. Above her, in the maintenance tunnels, there was moving into position. It had found an access point that would drop it into a service corridor running parallel to the antique market. From there, it could slip through a ventilation shaft and emerge right behind its prey. The thermal pits tracked the bright shape of the creature as it moved deeper into the alcove. Yes, this was perfect. The prey was walking into a trap without even knowing it. The paused at the access point and ran through its mental checklist one more time. Prey identified, small, soft biped, no visible natural weapons. Prey isolated, companion is far away, no other creatures nearby. Strike zone, the alcove ahead, enclosed space, limited escape routes. Everything was ready. This body tensed with anticipation. It had not eaten in many cycles. Hunger gnawed at its belly. Soon, that hunger would be satisfied. It dropped silently into the service corridor and began to stalk toward its prey. Had reached the back of the alcove. She stood in front of a display case containing old star maps, her reflection ghost-like in the dusty glass. The maps showed constellations she did not recognize, trade routes that had been abandoned generations ago. She felt a small chill run down her spine. Strange. The station's climate control kept everything at a comfortable temperature. There was no reason to feel cold. She turned and looked back the way she had come. The alcove stretched before her, empty except for the dusty displays. The main marketplace was visible in the distance, a blur of movement and color. Something felt wrong. Was not sure why. There was nothing she could point to, nothing she could explain, just a feeling, a whisper in the back of her mind that said, "You are not alone." She stood very still, her eyes scanning the shadows. Her hand drifted toward the utility knife on her belt. It was a small tool meant for cutting rope and opening packages. Not much of a weapon, but it was something. The feeling passed, let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. "Getting paranoid in your old age," she muttered to herself. She turned back to the star maps, trying to shake off the strange unease. She did not see the ventilation grate behind her shift slightly. She did not hear the soft click of claws on metal. There was 3 meters away from its prey. It could smell her now. A strange smell different from any species it had hunted before. Hot, alive, full of rushing blood. It prepared to spring. Then, following the final step of its hunting protocol, it accessed the station's public database to identify exactly what kind of creature it was about to kill. That was when everything changed. Its claws were fully extended. Its muscles were coiled like springs. Its mouth was already opening, ready to sink hundreds of needle teeth into soft flesh. 3 meters, 2 seconds. The hunt was about to end. Then the data from the station's public database flooded into its mind. Species human. Earth, also called Sol III. Classification, Death World. The froze. Its claws remained extended, but its body stopped moving. Every hunting instinct screamed at it to pause, to wait, to gather more information before making a possibly fatal mistake. Death World. The words echoed in this mind like a warning bell. The galaxy classified planets based on how dangerous they were to life. Most inhabited worlds fell into the safe categories: mild weather, stable environments, predictable ecosystems. These were the places where civilizations grew and thrived. Death worlds were different. Death worlds were planets where nature itself seemed determined to kill everything on its surface, where the environment was so hostile, so violent, so unpredictable that any life surviving there had to become equally violent just to exist. They came from a death world. It knew what that meant. It knew what kind of creatures such places produced. It began reading the entry on humans, and with each line, its hunger turned to something else, something that had not felt in a very long time. Fear. Earth was a planet of extremes. The data explained that its temperature could swing from burning hot to freezing cold, sometimes in the same location at different times of year. Humans had evolved to survive in all of these conditions. Their bodies could adapt to heat that would cook other species alive. They could endure cold that would freeze most creatures solid. The atmosphere of Earth was toxic by galactic standards. It contained a gas called oxygen at concentrations that were corrosive to most organic material. Humans breathed this poison like it was nothing. Their blood used it to fuel their bodies. They literally burned oxygen inside themselves to generate energy. That explained the heat. The now understood why the creature burned so bright in its thermal vision. Humans were furnaces. They generated their own heat constantly, keeping their internal temperature stable no matter what was happening around them. They kept reading. Gravity on Earth was high compared to most inhabited worlds. This meant that humans were strong, much stronger than their soft appearance suggested. Their muscles and bones had developed to carry weight that would crush creatures from lighter planets. But the physical data was not what made the pause. What made it pause was the section on human behavior. Humans were predators, not ambush predators like the who struck fast and hard from hiding. Humans were something far more terrifying. They were persistence predators. They read the description 3 times to make sure it understood correctly. Humans hunted by following their prey, not for hours, not for days, for weeks. They would pick a target and simply walk after it. They did not need to be fast because they never stopped. Their prey would run and run and run, and the humans would follow at a steady pace, never rushing, never tiring. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion, and then the humans would catch up. They tried to imagine what that would be like, being chased by something that never got tired, running until your legs gave out, until your heart was ready to burst, and looking back to see your hunter still coming, still walking, patient and relentless. It was a nightmare. The data continued. Humans had used this hunting strategy to become the dominant species on their death world. They had hunted creatures many times their size. They had driven most of Earth's large predators to extinction, not by being stronger or faster or deadlier, but by being more persistent than anything else alive. The thought about what this meant for its current situation. If it attacked this human and failed to kill her instantly, what would happen? Would she run away? Would she call for help and hide? No, the data suggested something much worse. She would hunt it back. There were documented cases in the database, cases of humans who had been wronged by other species. The humans did not forget. They did not move on. They tracked down those who had hurt them across years and light years. They followed trails that had gone cold decades ago. They found their targets no matter where they hid. They had always been the hunter. It had never considered what it would be like to become the prey. The database had more warnings. Humans formed intense social bonds with each other and with other species. They called this pack bonding. If you killed one human, its pack would come for you, not out of instinct, not out of animal rage, out of deliberate, calculated revenge. The female human below had a companion. They had seen him earlier. If they killed the female, the male would not rest until he found her killer. And humans were very, very good at finding things. They looked at the small creature standing in the alcove below, still unaware of the predator crouched behind her. She looked so harmless, so fragile. Her skin was thin. She had no armor, no claws, no fangs. But she came from a world where everything was trying to kill her. She was descended from millions of years of ancestors who had survived the unsurvivable. Every cell in her body was designed for persistence, for endurance, for refusing to die. The had made a terrible mistake. It had seen something that looked like prey. It had not realized it was looking at another apex predator, one from a world that made this own seem peaceful by comparison. The slowly retracted its claws, its muscles unclenched. Its hunting instincts went silent, replaced by something older and more fundamental. The survival instinct. It began to retreat, sliding back through the ventilation shaft as silently as it had come. Its skin shifted colors, blending with the metal walls. Its heat signature dropped as it slowed its metabolism, becoming as cold and invisible as possible. It would not hunt this creature. It would not hunt any human ever. Some prey was too dangerous to chase. Behind it turned and looked at the ventilation grate. She could have sworn she heard something, a soft scraping sound like metal on metal. She stared at the grate for a long moment. Then she shrugged and turned back to the displays. She never knew how close she had come to death, or how close death had come to meeting something worse than itself. The retreated through the maintenance tunnels faster than it had ever moved before. Its heart was pounding. Its skin kept shifting colors without its control, flickering between gray and black and mottled patterns that meant nothing. Its body was reacting to pure terror. It had almost made the worst mistake of its life. As it fled deeper into the station's hidden passages, this mind kept returning to the data it had read. There was so much more, so many more reasons to be afraid. Humans had something called an adrenaline response. When they were threatened or angry, their bodies released chemicals that made them faster and stronger. They could ignore pain. They could push past physical limits that should have stopped them. Wounded humans were documented fighting for hours with injuries that would have killed other species instantly. The thought about what would have happened if it had attacked but failed to kill with the first strike. The human would have felt pain, yes, but then her body would have flooded with these chemicals. She would have become stronger, faster, more dangerous. And she would have been angry. Humans held grudges. The data was very clear about this. They did not forget attacks. They did not forgive easily. A human who had been hurt would remember who hurt them forever. They kept moving through the tunnels, putting as much distance as possible between itself and the marketplace. It needed to leave this station. It needed to leave today, on the next ship heading anywhere else. But even as it fled, some part of its predator brain was still analyzing the situation, still trying to understand how it had misjudged so badly. The human had looked harmless. That was the problem. Everything about her appearance was designed to make other creatures underestimate her. Soft skin, no visible weapons, small size, calm behavior. The now understood that this was the most dangerous kind of camouflage. Other predators showed their weapons. They had fangs and claws and armored scales that warned other creatures to stay away. Humans had none of these things. Because humans did not need to warn anyone. They were the warning. The stopped in a junction where 3 tunnels met. It needed to think. It needed to make a plan. But its mind kept returning to one detail from the database that disturbed it more than all the others. Humans found dangerous things interesting. When humans had achieved space travel, they had immediately begun seeking out the most deadly creatures in the galaxy, not to avoid them, not to kill them from a safe distance, but to study them, to understand them, sometimes to form relationships with them. Humans kept predators as pets. They walked into dangerous environments for fun. They invented activities that risked their lives for no reason other than enjoyment. They called it adventure. What kind of species found death entertaining? A species that had beaten death so many times, it was no longer afraid of it. The thought about its own. It had believed that surviving there made it one of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Now it realized that compared to Earth, it was gentle, predictable, survivable. Humans had not just survived Earth, they had conquered it. Every predator that had tried to hunt them was now either extinct or living in fear. Every environment that had tried to kill them had been tamed. They had spread across their entire planet and then looked up at the stars and thought, what else is there? They understood something it had never considered before. It was not at the top of the food chain. It had never been at the top. Humans were at the top, and they had been there for a very long time. Back in the marketplace had finally left the antique alcove. She walked slowly through the displays, her mind still troubled by that strange feeling she had experienced. Something had been watching her. She was sure of it. But the feeling was gone now. Whatever it was, it had decided to leave her alone. Found a small cafe near the edge of the market and ordered a drink. She sat at a table and watched the aliens walking past, thinking about nothing in particular. A few minutes later appeared. He was carrying a small box of parts and looking pleased with himself. Found everything I needed, he said, sitting down across from her. And I got a good price. The dealer seemed nervous for some reason, almost like he wanted me to leave as fast as possible. Raised an eyebrow, nervous how? I don't know, just kept looking at me like I might bite him or something. Laughed. Maybe humans make some species uncomfortable. Maybe, said. She thought about the feeling she had experienced in the alcove, the sense of being watched, the chill down her spine. Are you okay? Asked, noticing her expression. You look distracted. I'm fine, just thinking. Took a sip of her drink. Have you ever wondered why aliens react to us the way they do? Some of them are scared of us. Others want to be our friends immediately. It's strange. Shrugged, maybe they know something we don't. He meant it as a joke, but did not laugh. She looked out at the crowded marketplace, at all the creatures from all the worlds that had come together in this place. She wondered how many of them looked at her and saw something dangerous, something to be feared or respected, something that should not be threatened under any circumstances. It was a strange thought, had never considered herself dangerous. She was just a cargo hauler, just a woman trying to make a living among the stars. But maybe that was exactly what made humans so terrifying. They did not think of themselves as predators. They did not see themselves as threats. They were just people, doing people things, completely unaware of the evolutionary nightmare they represented to the rest of the galaxy. They had understood this in the moments before it fled. Would probably never understand it at all. And somehow that made her even more frightening. 3 days later, and were preparing their ship for departure. The cooling system had been fixed. The cargo hold was full of goods they would deliver to colonies in the outer reaches. Everything was ready for the long journey ahead. Was checking the navigation systems when she heard footsteps on the loading ramp. She turned and saw a small creature standing at the entrance to the cargo bay. It was one of the nervous, six-legged beings she had seen in the marketplace. Its gray fur was ruffled, and its antenna twitched rapidly. "Hello," said, surprised. "Can I help you?" They made a sound that the translator turned into words. "You are humans, yes." "That's right." The creature's antenna twitched faster. It seemed to be gathering courage. "I travel to the outer reaches, same direction as you. The journey is dangerous, pirates, predators, many bad things in the empty spaces between stars." Nodded slowly. "It can be rough out there." "I would pay," they said quickly. "Pay well for protection, for escort." It paused, then added in a smaller voice, "for having humans nearby." Looked at the small creature for a long moment. This was not the first time someone had asked for their protection. Since humans had joined the galactic community, they had discovered that their presence made other species feel safer. It was strange, but it was also useful. She called over her shoulder, "Come here for a second." Emerged from the engine room, wiping his hands on a rag. He saw thee and raised his eyebrows. "What's going on?" This person wants to travel with us to the outer reaches. They're willing to pay for the company. Looked at then at. She could see him thinking the same thing she was thinking. The outer reaches were dangerous. Having someone else on board could be complicated. But the money would be good, and it was not a big detour from their planned route. "We're heading that direction anyway," said finally. "I'm sure we can work something out." The entire body relaxed. Its antenna stopped twitching. Relief radiated from it like heat from a fire. "Thank you," it said. "Thank you, thank you. You will not regret this. I am good passenger, quiet, no trouble, just want to travel safe." Smiled and helped the carry its small bag of belongings onto the ship. As she did, she wondered again about the strange reputation humans had earned among the stars. Far away on the other side of the station, there was boarding a transport ship heading in the opposite direction. It had abandoned its hunting ground. It had left behind weeks of careful preparation. It did not care. It just wanted to be somewhere else, somewhere without humans. As the transport lifted off, the watched orbital station shrink in the viewport. It thought about the small human female who had almost become its prey. She would never know how close she had come to death. She would never know that a predator had watched her, stalked her, prepared to kill her. And she would never know that the predator had retreated in fear. That was the most disturbing part. Humans went through their lives without understanding what they were. They thought of themselves as ordinary. They complained about being fragile. They worried about injuries and illnesses and dangers that would barely inconvenience most species. They had no idea that the rest of the galaxy looked at them and saw monsters. They would have nightmares about that human female for years. Her calm face, her soft body, her complete lack of awareness that she was standing 3 meters away from a killing machine. She had not been afraid because she did not know she should be afraid. But even if she had known, realized, she probably still would not have been afraid, because humans did not fear predators. Humans had spent millions of years teaching predators to fear them instead. Back on ship, they had settled into a small cabin near the cargo bay. Found it watching her from the doorway as she passed, its large eyes tracking her movements. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No, no," they said quickly. "Just looking. I have never been close to humans before, only seen from far away." "We're not that interesting," said with a laugh. "Just people." They made a sound that the translator turned into something like respectful disagreement. "On my world, we have stories about humans. Old stories now from when first contact happened. Stories about creatures from a world of fire and ice. Creatures that never stop, never tire, never give up." Was not sure what to say to that. "We're really not that special." "You say that," they replied. "All humans say that, but we see different. We see what you do not see about yourselves." The ship's engines hummed to life. His voice came over the intercom, announcing that they were cleared for departure, excused herself and headed to the cockpit. She strapped into her seat and watched the stars appear as they left the station behind. Was already running final checks, his attention focused on the controls. "You know," that said something strange about how other species see us." "What did they say?" "That they see something in us that we don't see in ourselves." Was quiet for a moment, then he shrugged. "Maybe they do, does it matter?" Thought about it. She thought about the feeling she had experienced in the antique alcove, the sense of being watched, the presence that had been there one moment and gone the next. Something had been hunting her. She was certain of that now, even though she could not explain how she knew. Something had chosen her as prey, had stalked her, had prepared to strike. And then it had changed its mind and fled. Why? What had scared it away? The answer, of course, was her. Just her. Just a human woman standing in a quiet corner of a marketplace, completely unaware of the danger. But she would never know that. She would never understand what her very existence meant to the creatures of the galaxy. She was human, and that was enough. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, and the stars stretched into lines of light. Ahead lay the outer reaches, full of dangers and wonders. Behind them, a predator was fleeing to the far corners of space, haunted by the memory of prey it was too afraid to touch. Smiled and watched the stars go by. She did not know why she felt so content. But deep in her bones, in the part of her that carried millions of years of evolutionary history, something ancient and patient knew exactly why. It knew that nothing in the universe could hunt humanity, because humanity had already won.